I want to discuss an important distinction we make in modelling between what we refer to as the model and a diagram, or what we call model elements and diagram elements. When we talk about model elements, we're usually referring to one of these items in the model hierarchy, represented in Enterprise Architect's project browser. Model elements can exist independently of any diagram. They may be shown on one or more diagrams, or none. In any case, they are part of the model and help define what the model means. Once we draw one of these model elements on a diagram, perhaps by drag and drop from the project browser, we create what's called a diagram element. This is just a representation or view of the underlying element in the model hierarchy. Whatever we do here on the diagram to change its appearance, for example, its shape or its size, the font color, that kind of thing, well, that doesn't necessarily alter the meaning or semantics of the model, and we can easily undo such changes. Also, bear in mind, what I'm discussing here about elements applies equally to relationships. They too exist irrespective of whether or how they're drawn on a diagram. Now, the difference between the model and diagram can be confusing because, depending on your experience with various tools, you may be inclined to think that if I delete an element from a diagram, like this, that it's also removed from my model. But that's not the case at all, as you can see in the hierarchy here. All I did was make a diagrammatic change, which I'll undo now. We could illustrate it this way. Consider the difference between a person and a photograph of a person. Well, a person, just like a model element, can exist whether there are any photographs of them or not. The photograph, just like a diagram element, can highlight certain aspects of a person. It can show physical attributes, family and work relationships, and so on. In the same way, as you take elements in the model hierarchy and draw them on diagrams, it's the diagram elements that help you to highlight certain aspects of the model, such as the properties of an element or its relationships to other model elements. And just as a person can be shown in many photographs, the same element can be drawn in many diagrams. Now you might say, well, don't we have to draw an element on a diagram to create it in the model in the first place? So doesn't that mean that the model element really does depend on a diagram element? Well, no, it doesn't. Although we often do draw the model element while we first create it, there are many other ways to create elements in the model without using a diagram element. Coming back to our person and photograph analogy, the model element being created is analogous to a person born as a baby. Now, while it's true that many parents will take a photograph of their newborn baby, others may choose not to. Would the fact that no photograph of the baby existed yet mean that that person didn't exist? Clearly not. Similarly, we can add elements to our model without drawing or photographing them first. Let's see one such approach. In the project browser, I can right-click a package to add elements directly. Suppose I need to add a moderator role to the model of our webinar system here. I choose Add Element, select the type of element I want under Use Case. I want an actor. Now type in the element's name, then click Save and Exit. The moderator now exists whether or not I choose to draw it on a diagram like this one. For example, when I drag and drop it to the diagram here, I'm saying this is just a visual link to the original model element. I can draw it, move it, or even delete it from this diagram without any effect on the moderator element in the model hierarchy.